Welcome to Start Before You're Ready, the podcast that proves that you don't need to wait for the perfect moment to begin your journey towards better health and happiness. I'm your host, Kelly Young. Remember, the first step is often the hardest, but it's always worth taking. Hey guys, it's Kelly and I'm back with another episode of Start Before You're Ready. Today is the day where I have my dream guest on. My husband, Andrew, has agreed to do the podcast. I actually pulled the birthday card. This podcast will come out on Monday, April 6th, which is my birthday. And I said, Andrew, for my birthday, I would love for you to be a guest on the podcast. And he kind of said no, but then he said yes. And so here we are. So Andrew is not just my husband. He is a boot camper and he has been a boot camper since day one. And it's been incredible to have this experience together as a couple. One of the things that I used to say when our kids were little was like, you go through this stage of life where everything's about your kids. It's like it's your kids or your house or your job, and you don't really have anything for you. But even though this was my business, I really felt like having the boot camp community and having that experience every morning on Saturday morning together was something that we had together outside of our responsibilities. So I'm very grateful for Andrew for being part of the boot camp community. And I'm also really proud of him. He's not like me. I love words of affirmation. He does not, but I'm really proud of him because he's been incredibly consistent over the years. And it's actually been brought to my attention most recently as I'm leaving the house on Saturday morning and he's not coming to boot camp because he actually had hip replacement. 2 weeks ago, he had his hip replaced. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But I also want to mention that we can talk about that when we get to his hip replacement, but I'm really proud of the way he's been able to recover from his hip replacement surgery. And I do believe that a lot has to do with his consistency with exercise over the past, we'll call it 20 years. So Andrew, welcome to Start Before You're Ready. And I'm so excited to have you as a guest. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself to our Start Before You're Ready community?
Sure. And happy birthday, beats shopping. And I'm glad to be here. Kelly and I have been married for 26 years. I have been a boot camper since day one. As listeners to your podcast well know, we have 4 wonderful children together. And it's been a central part of our lives and following them around and watching sports and doing fun things together as a family. And now we're finding ourselves approaching empty nestum. And I think it's time to then start doubling down on my fitness journey. The last few years have not been quite what they were for the prior decade or so. And I look forward to having a little bit more time to myself, which will include me trying to get healthier.
I love that. Well, that's a present right there, Andrew. Well, okay, so let's go back. I'm going to go back 20 years and even more than that. So because a lot of people ask me, was Andrew really into exercise? Was he? And I say, no, Andrew was really into sports. Andrew only wanted to exercise if he was doing a sport. He loves all sports. He's a great athlete, super athletic, and just loves to be participating in team sports. And I remember when we were first dating, I would say, come to my class. And if I couldn't get you to do it then, I kind of figured I'd never get you to do it because you were just like, no, I don't like to exercise just for the act of exercising. I like to be doing something, which I want to say I respected, but I still have in the back of my head, someday I will get him in my class. And you also didn't like to run. I didn't really like to run either, but you weren't a runner either. You didn't want to I get it. Like, I get it. You didn't want to exercise if you weren't like partaking in a sport, which at that time in your life, you were in a hockey league, you were in a basketball league, you were on a softball league. Like that was all things that you could do. But we fast forward to 2008, when the year my dad died, I lost another family member and I was back in New York for another funeral and you didn't go. and you were home with the kids, and Jim, my Uncle Jim, suggested that we did this half marathon in Las Vegas on my dad's birthday in December. And it was the spring. And I said, I only do it if Andrew will do it, because then that's something we can do together. But that was my thing. And I was like, I don't know. Andrew doesn't love to exercise, like for the act of exercising. I really doubt it. I remember I called you from Niskayuna, and I was like, Uncle Jim wants us to do this half marathon on my dad's birthday in Las Vegas. Would you do it? And you said yes. And I about died. I was like, oh my gosh. So that was the start. That was really our start. And we both took it really seriously. Neither of us were runners. And I remember you told me you're the math guy and you're the everything figured out. And you're like, running to Little River is exactly a mile. So you've got to run like the first day, you've got to run to Little River. So you kind of became the coach in the running. I think you were more of you had more experience than I did. So that was our first journey. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. And I'm a little surprised to say that you said you were surprised. Of course, there was no hesitation in doing it to honor your dad. And I'm so glad that we did, because it did start a journey for me, not only with getting more into running as a source of exercise, but I think it made me healthier and got me more into boot camp. But in terms of the half marathon itself, for me, everything is a puzzle, and I'm very analytical. And so I took Jim's coach sheet. What are the steps that need to be done? It's like we had X number of weeks between when we decided in the race, and he gave everybody an agenda to follow, and I followed it to a T. So even though a lot of it was over the winter and it was cold or snowing or whatever, it's like on this day I was supposed to run 3 miles, or this day I do fartleks or sprints. And I just followed that sheet of paper. So that made it really easy, because I had a schedule to follow. And so I did that. And as coming across that finish line, certainly a sense of pride of that accomplishment, what it brought together for our broader family and what it meant in terms of honoring your dad. It was really a special experience.
Yeah, it was awesome. Do you remember who finished first?
I'm guessing it's you if you're asking the question.
I do have our bibs if we need to refer to that. But yes, very, very, this is good, because I think I finished a couple minutes before you. And that was the very last time that I even came close to being able to run with you, because you became a really good runner and I kind of stayed the same. So yes, but for you to go from not doing aerobic exercise ongoing and to finish that half, that was pretty amazing. So yeah. Okay. So that's great. So that's how we all started. And then you were all in for the boot camp too. I don't think that really took much convincing. And just for our listeners, we did not leave our kids, because our oldest at the time was 8. So we had a babysitter that would come to our house on Saturday morning to watch the kids, and it was worth it. We didn't get babysitters a lot. We weren't, we really didn't, but to me, it was worth it to have Andrew there and to have that together. So that was kind of our like Saturday morning date for a really long time. And a lot of times he would leave early to take Dalton and Brandon to soccer, or whoever had to go wherever. But it was definitely part of our routine. And everyone loved Andrew because he would make the jokes, right? Like I'm serious about it now, but back then I was super serious about it. Like we were winning some kind of something. Like my boot camp team was all stars and we were just going to be the best of the best. And I took it really seriously, and Andrew would, be able to make some jokes about beer or something. So everyone loves Andrew as a student. In fact, we did something not too long ago where it was like, who would you most likely want to be partners with? And so many people said Andrew. And the reason is because he is just a great cheerleader. So if, you pair people together, it's not because he's the best at anything. It's because he's going to make you do your best. He's just got that like inner athlete where he's just like willing to cheer and coach the person next to him. So that's another fun fact about Andrew. And so Andrew, let's talk about you going from I'm not going to exercise just to exercise to becoming a boot camper. Was that a hard transition, or did you feel like no, that was doable for you?
I thought it was very doable in large part because why I love sports is I love competing. Very competitive person, but even sports to me are more about competing with yourself than competing with others. It's said to the kids as I coach them growing up, it's like such a privilege to step on a field and give it your all and respect your opponent. And there's just a sense of deep pride and satisfaction that comes from giving whatever you're doing your all. And I think from the very beginning with boot camp, there was always ways to make it competitive. And it's not about what the person next to you is doing or how fast they were running or how many push-ups that they could do, but taking all of the things that we did with each one of those exercises and figuring out how I could do it either the fastest or the most or the best form that I possibly could. And so just taking that mentality throughout, to me, made it a competition versus just feeling like what I thought the experience was going to be going to the Y in Greensboro when we were dating and you wanted me to go. It's like stepping up and down on a step to me had no appeal. There's no way in my mind to do that the best possible way. But even now, the rare instances when I go to a step class, I do get a sense of enjoyment from that to just figure out how to even make the steps or stay on rhythm as best I can. And that becomes my source of inner competition.
Yeah, that's great. And that's so good. And I love that, Andrew, because that's what we tell people. Like there's got to be something about it that you like, right? And that was your thing. But fast forward to now, or for the past 5 years, call it, when you've been injured and nobody would have continued to, and just for the record, I didn't make him, but when you get older and you've got limitations, you really have to keep moving. You've got to find something that you can do. And you were so good at doing that at boot camp, where it's like there was a lot of exercises where you just couldn't go in that position. Your hip was bone on bone and you just couldn't do it, but you found other things that you could do. You either substituted completely or did your own version of it. And I think that's been so helpful for the guys, especially the guys, especially guys like you that are athletic and like are used to being good at stuff and you want to show your athleticism. It's like, okay, I can't do a lot of this, but I'm still here doing what I can. I think that was a really good role model. Was that hard for you to not be able to do everything?
It wasn't hard to show up to class. It was frustrating looking myself in the mirror and realizing like I couldn't really tie my shoes, let alone do a lot of the exercises. So I'm excited to be on the other side of surgery and looking forward to being back at 100% and feeling more like myself. But the thing that you often tell people at class is no one else is looking at you. And so I think that's probably the biggest barrier is if I'm off on the corner when everybody's running and I didn't feel like I could run, there were certain jump movements that didn't bother my hip. And so I just stepped to the side and jumped to keep my heart rate up. And as long as you don't get yourself caught in the bogus trap of people are kind of laughing at me on the inside because I'm not doing what they're doing. Nobody thinks that way. The only person that thinks that way is yourself. And so maybe there were some times really early on my hip started bothering me just a little bit and I felt limited and I was frustrated and I wanted to keep up with other people. And I kind of wondered if they were thinking, gosh, he's not doing the things that he used to do. But that was fleeting. And I think that maybe one or two times that story got in my head, but it very quickly got out. And so, no, I never had an issue after that, just to show up and do whatever it is that I could do, which goes back to I'm competing with myself. And I would always challenge myself to do whatever it is that I could do as best I could. And that's good enough.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. That's really good. And you made a lot of friends through the boot camp community. Some of your very close friends are from the boot camp community. In fact, the other day after boot camp, the guys all came over. Andrew had his surgery on Thursday, and they all came over on Sunday and watched basketball with him. Just sit with them and hang out with them, which I thought was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's just a microcosm of the broader community that you've created. And just look around, and some of our best friends are people that we either met through or our bonds tremendously strengthened through boot camp over the last 18 years. And there's something to be said for people being there for one another and cheering one another and being out in the snow and the rain and pushing ourselves and getting healthier. I think that's just a very natural foundation of bonds that we've built upon over many years. And some of the people that I feel closest to in the world are a part of the community. And it's another reason why it's just so easy to go to class these days too. They look forward to saying hi to people that I respect, admire, and enjoy being around.
Yes, I love that. Well, so going back to the community, I skirted over this a little bit in introducing you, but let's go back to when we moved to Northern Virginia. You had a new job, and it was a lot. Just the commute. Everyone knows that lives in our area knows how awful that commute was back then. It's really not as bad as it was. It used to take you like an hour and change. But when I started doing the Saturday boot camp, that was fine because you were home and it was a Saturday. But then when I wanted to take the boot camp to the next level and start doing weekday classes, I really needed you to help me with the kids. And you were always, if you could do it, you would. There was never like, you never made me feel like, oh, well, this is a huge burden. In fact, the Friday class, I think I had a morning class Monday and Wednesday, an early morning class, and you had it figured out where you could help get the kids on the bus and I'd be home and then you'd leave for work. But on Friday, it was like, well, I can't go in late that many days. So that was called the bonus class. And it actually is still, it was called the bonus class for like 3 years. And then finally I was like, okay, Andrew's never I've never not been able to teach this. So he's always found a way to make it work. So we turned it into calling it Run Club. But I do think that just for anyone that's entrepreneur or has something on their heart that they want to do, having the support of your spouse, whether it be male, female, whichever way it is huge. And I remember Sheila said to me, my stepmom Sheila said, when you got a promotion at work, she's like, Kelly, behind every good man is a good woman or something like that. And I thought to myself, well, the reason I'm able to do what I do and love so much and have been able to grow this community and put my heart and soul into it is because of you, because you always cheered for me and you were a part of it. So it didn't feel like something separate that I was taking away from our family. Our family has been a part of it. Our kids, Dalton's podcast was one of my very favorites. And he talked about how he grew up hanging out with the other boot camp kids and they would ride their bikes or ride their scooters. But I'm sure at times it was hard, right? Like it was hard because I am kind of all in when I do something. And I'm sure that there was times when you felt like, oh my gosh, like it's boot camp. Like it's not, but what do you feel like, how is that in your mind? How has that helped us and helped our relationship or helped our family as far as like just being supportive of each other?
Well, I don't think I ever thought it's just boot camp, right? I think behind every strong bond is people who are cheering for one another, whether it's a marriage or whether it's a friendship. And I think we're very similar in that we're both very competitive and put our whole selves into whatever it is we're doing, whether it's working out or whether it's our jobs. And so I think we both made it work. It's not like I disproportionately made sacrifices that you didn't make. There's a reciprocation and just making trade-offs as you go through life. And I think to your question then about the kids, I think the kids see that and realize the importance of being a good friend or a spouse or a child or a parent, whatever role it is that we're playing, where there's other people to consider. It's being there to help people achieve the things that are important to them. And sometimes you're on the receiving end of that, and sometimes you're on the giving end of that. And I'd also then go back to the community, because I think we also have a number of friends who, in those instances where I was stuck at work and you had something else, people would pick the kids up from practice when we got into a pinch. And I think that's what really makes a great community, is people who are there looking out for one another, willing to make sacrifices to help people in their times of need. And we see it in spades across this community, whether people are struggling with parents or kids or themselves and their help. People being there for one another is what helps us all get the most out of life. We lived that as we went through, like having to juggle the kids when they were little. And I think it's probably becoming easier now that they're off all doing their own thing. But I don't think the making sacrifices for one another, whether it's the two of us or for our friends or our friends on behalf of us, all of that's a lifelong mentality that I think people either take or they don't, and that they're there for other people or they're going to be focused on themselves. And I just like to surround myself with people who take that mindset.
It's funny. I was at Dr. Goodwin's office, who recommended Andrew's hip surgery. He didn't do the surgery, but we were talking about 40 somethings actually, and he was saying they're at work all day. They sit at their desk and then they think they can go for a 20-minute walk and fix everything. What would you say, Andrew? Because it is, I mean, when you think about it, I use you as an example for my people that work outside of the home for when I don't see them for a while. One of the things that I pride myself in my community is I really try to keep tabs on my members. Not so much now because there's not for all the classes, but for people that come to my classes, because there's so many different instructors and so many different classes. But when I don't see someone for a while at night and they're like, oh, work is crazy, I feel like I have a better understanding because I know that you go through seasons where your work is so crazy that you want to be there. It's not that you're being lazy. You're just working till late at night or traveling or whatever it is. What would you say to someone maybe that's a little bit younger, that's in that season of life where work is just really, obviously it's a huge part of their life and they're having a hard time making the time for themselves, whether it be a man or a woman? What would your suggestion be?
I don't know if there's a universal bit of advice, because it's presumptuous of me to think that I know what people experience in their jobs or their requirements. But if I oversimplify it, a metaphor that I use all the time with my team at work, where we just feel inundated with so many projects and initiatives where we can be downstream of the rest of the company, is the metaphor of the jar of time, where if you go to fill a jar and you have rocks and pebbles and sand, the order in which you put those things in the jar matters tremendously. And just to elaborate on the metaphor, if the sand is just a bunch of less consequential things that you're doing every day, and the rocks are the more substantial things that really matter, and of course the pebbles are in between the two, if you start filling the jar with sand, way fewer rocks are actually going to fit in, as opposed to you need to start with the rocks and then put the pebbles in and then put the sand in. And that's how you can most densely fill the jar. And I tell people you've got to start with what the rocks are, and you get to define what are the most important things in your life. And if they're that important, you need to put them in the jar first. And I've been fortunate working for the same company for 30 years, but I can think of very few things that I've missed where I regret not being there. And I think part of it is the culture of the company that I work for, but I also think part of it was just my relentless, unwavering commitment to be there for the things that I thought were important. And for me, it starts with our family. And I always put that rock in first. And I'm sure that there are situations where people feel like they may not have the same degree of flexibility. But I would argue that at least at the margin for most people, they allow themselves to be the victim of other people cramming stuff in their jar versus them really being deliberate about how they choose to allocate their limited time.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. And I think that just going back to you and your kind of, you have a lot of rules when it comes to what you're going to do and what you're not going to do when it comes to your schedule. And I remember one time we were having our conversation and I was trying to encourage you to work out in the morning because nights are just crazy. And so it was maybe at a different season or I thought you'd be more consistent. And you were like, no, I need to read. Morning is when I need to do my reading and my most important work. And I'm like, oh, your workouts are your most important work. But it is if that's fair. I mean, that's fair for you that time. You're not going to work out in the morning. That just doesn't work for you. And it's okay. But I think that that's a good example of when someone's trying to be consistent with something and they're not just trying to muscle their way through it for a short amount of time, you really do need to think about you and what works for you. And that's a really good example. And
you and I have had the conversation, but for the benefit of people listening, I think some of our rocks and pebbles are different, right? Some of the things that are important to you aren't important to me. When we go on vacation, you cannot miss a day of working out, and I can. I'm totally content swimming up to the bar at 10 o'clock in the morning and having drinks and playing in the pool. And that release for me and getting the time with the kids is important to me. But it's all about being deliberate about the things that matter. And you can't impart on somebody else things that are important to them. It's finding those things in the mirror that you care about and that are unrelenting, and make those things a priority for yourself. And so I do care about my health, and I think working out does help me. But to your point, in the morning, that's non-negotiable. That's when I read. That's when I think. That's when my mind is most clear. And if that means that I'm stuck at work late and I can't work out at night, that's a trade-off that I am absolutely willing to make, despite the fact that you don't quite understand that it doesn't bother me. I try on average to at least work out a few times a week and be present. And I think over the years, I have been pretty consistent at that. You absolutely have. And I think I think this is a good time to talk about being different and kind of making it work together. I mean, our personalities are different. I'll go back when we were in Richmond. I just remember every Saturday I'd be like, what are we going to do? What project are we going to do? What huge
thing are we going to do this weekend accomplish? Because I'm like productive and want to be doing something at all times. And you're like, yeah, I just need to like chill. Like I will, we'll go to Costco or whatever, but like, that's it. Like, and it for a while, that was a hard part of our relationship because I am, again, like I'm the extreme. I think you're normal and I'm the extreme of like constantly wanting to be doing something, producing something. But I really feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I really feel like I have learned from you to be better about doing less on the productive side on the weekend.
This is a birthday podcast, so I will agree with you.
When you say that's true.
No, I said it's a birthday podcast, so I'll agree with you on that.
I think I have gotten better.
I think you've gotten marginally better, but again, it goes back to who each of us are. And I'm tired. And, at the end of the day, I don't want to think or talk. And you're very extroverted and I am introverted. And I think in our family, the allocation of words used in the house is probably 95% by you and 5% by me, which is probably not a surprise to anybody watching this, but that's who you are. And like you said, you want to be doing, and
95 is a lot. 95. I don't talk 95%. That's not true.
Well, we'll have to go back at the end of this podcast and time out the words, but I guess since it's a two-way conversation, I'm going to take more than my normal share. Well, we'll have to go back at the end of this podcast and time out the words, but I guess since it's a two-way conversation, I'm going to take more than my normal share here in this conversation. But yeah, I just think we're all different. And I think that translates to working out too. I think there's people who show up, like when I go work out or when you do your assessments, and when I come home and throwing up or I'm laying on the sofa for an hour because I feel so sick, and then you come in and say, why did you push yourself? That's how I am. But I think there's other people who don't approach the assessments in that same way. And that's totally fine. I don't judge somebody. People push themselves in different ways. And it's just knowing who we are. And for me, going back then to spending time, like I give everything I have mentally during the day to my job, and I know I need to recover. I know I need to sleep. And that is how I operate and can be my best self. And you are just built different. There's people who can sleep 5 hours a night and they feel rested in the morning. I don't. And there's people who can run ultra marathons. I know I would never be able to do that. People are just built differently. There isn't a one size fits all approach. And the more that we as individuals can figure out who that is, but we as individuals can also respect other people operating in a way that doesn't comport with what works for us and understanding that people are different. I think that's just such a healthy dynamic as opposed to imparting on others what we think is, quote, right for workouts or communication or getting things done on the weekend or whatever it might be. I think we should impart that judgment on others.
I agree. And I think there's a lot of mutual respect between us. And I think that we have, the point I was trying to make was we have meshed certain things, have come closer together. And I think that's helpful, but we also respect the fact that we're different, right? And we joke about it and it's like, and it's fine. You're way more athletic than I am. So like, I don't have that desire to be like the best. I just, my superpower for me has always been like, I'm going to keep going when other people get tired, right? That's my superpower. I'm not like the best in anything, but I'm going to outwork anybody. So yeah. And I think just to your point about you needing more downtime and you needing more. I think you're on the right track with a lot of the habits that you have. I think you really are. You value family first, for sure. It's always been the case. There's never been a time when you haven't put your family first, which I'm really grateful for as your wife. And I know your children would say the same. When you are on vacation or we're at Annapolis or you're so fun because that's like, you've compartmentalized, like, I'm off. Like, this is like, let's just have fun. If I say like, let's just relax. Let's just have fun. So like, there is a little bit of yin and yang, but I think it's good. I think it's worked for us.
I totally agree. And, I think even though it doesn't make sense fully to you, I think over many years, you've come to understand the importance to me of how I operate and that I have been introspective to try to figure out what works. And I think that's what great with one another. And, I don't have any qualms when you want to be running around doing things on the weekend. Like that should be, you should prioritize the things that matter to you. And often those things overlap with us as a family and sometimes they don't. And that's also healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point too. So let's go into some of your habits, because I do feel like over time you have adopted some really good habits. And this is what I coach and everybody that knows me knows I'm not going to tell you to do some huge overhaul in your diet to give up everything you love. I was just meeting with a couple this week that we're friends with socially, and they're starting boot camp later in life. And I'm like, listen, I'm not going to tell you to give up your cocktails on the weekend. I'm not going to tell you not to go out to eat, not to do all these things, because I think you should. If those are things that you value and those are things that you want to keep doing, absolutely. Like we just need to find change equals change, right? We need to dial it in somewhere so that you can continue to do those things that you love. And for you, the two things that I would say, you mentioned being consistent with exercise. You're actually a better, if it wasn't like going out to eat, you're a better eater than me. You are very regimented in how you eat. I mean, you don't eat as much variety, like vegetables and stuff, but like you have a meal and you're done. Like I'll be like, let me have like a skinny cow, or you don't do any of that. Your breakfast is great. You always have like a very high protein breakfast and, egg whites and salmon and salsa and all those things. And you are very good about eating. Like you eat at noon, you have a snack in the afternoon, or maybe a snack in the morning. You're really good about that. And obviously when we're home, you're great at dinner. But then like for you, the thing is like when you go out to eat, you're going to get whatever you want. If it's fries, if it's whatever, you're going to get you're not willing to do that. And the biggest thing we have to mention is you're not willing to give up beer, which I respect. But I just want to point out, I guess, and give you a chance to talk, because this does feel as if I'm talking a little too much, but give you a chance to talk about that, because that happened, that was not always how you were. You definitely adopted some really healthy habits over time. And I think the Winter Challenge was probably the beginning of that for you. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, that's where I was going to go. I was about to say, I think you're being generous with the habits. I think it did emanate out of the Winter Challenge and source where I was competitive, and I broke that down into setting a goal of how much weight I wanted to lose and dividing that by 3,500 calories. And so then just creating a calorie deficit by wearing a watch and running and doing the math to hit a target at the end of 6 or 7 or 8 weeks. And I definitely learned over those first couple of years some things about how my body reacted to food, what things worked well. So to your point, I pretty much always have a mid-morning snack and a mid-afternoon snack in some form or another, because I didn't realize until that time how hungry I would get, and then I would make terrible choices at lunch or dinner. And I also came to realize that I actually like the taste of egg whites and salsa and chicken breast. And so the few years where I really lost a lot of weight pushing myself during the winter contest, I just realized like, hey, I can eat these things. They have a lot of protein. My body craves carbs, but it's a great way for me to consume something that has a lot of protein that I actually like the taste of. And so I would say those are probably the two big things that I learned, to where I got totally regimented of every morning I eat egg whites with salsa, which I enjoy. And I'd say 95% of the time, even when we're on vacation, if that's an option, like that's what I would eat. And so I've just kind of gotten in the habit. But I also, to your point about going out to dinner, like I'm going to use the thing that I like, or I'm going to have a beer. And as long as working out with some regularity, coupling those bad choices with generally being good about food, knowing how my body reacts well, and exercising a reasonable amount, I can generally kind of maintain a bit of a weight. I've gotten, out of balance a bit over the last few years. I think the combination of work and work in my hip, going back to where we started, like I recognize I need to kind of re-baseline myself, but I at least know what works for me when I get around to kind of pushing myself to get back to a better equilibrium.
Yeah. Well, going back to your hip, that's really what I wanted to make. That's one of the many reasons why I wanted to have you on this podcast, Andrew. One is because you are an original boot camper and you have really benefited from the consistent exercise, even though it's never been extreme. Like you don't go every day, but you try to do it a couple times a week and keep going with it. But what I really noticed is after your surgery, you even said it to me because I was worried about things. I was like, how are you going to do this? How are you going to, you're like, I think I'm strong enough where I'll just be able to like use my strength to do this. And I was like, okay. And wow. I mean, not just me that said it, like you're after the surgery, within an hour of the surgery, you went to the physical therapy right in the same area. And the therapist was like, I wish you were my last patient because nobody's ever done this quick, right? You walked up and down the stairs, you did all the things that you had to do. And it was like, boom, you're out of there. And we came home and ready to, I told Dr. Goodman this, I'm like, I was ready to like, wait on you. Like I was ready to cook all your meals and to do everything. And you were like, no, I got it. Like you'd go up the stairs and you'd get your own ice machine and you do so much. But being realistic, it really hit home to me how important our strength is. And just keeping our strength. I don't care that someone might have some extra pounds on them. I'd much prefer them to be strong and functionally fit and have good body awareness, good balance, all the things that we've been coaching and teaching for the past 2 decades. You were such a great example of that. Were you surprised how well you were able to get around after your surgery? Do you want to talk a little bit about your surgery? Because I'm sure people would love to hear a little bit of inside information.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, am I surprised? I'm not really. I didn't know exactly what to expect. There's some other boot campers who have had it done. So I sort of pieced together through some of their stories and doing a little research and asking questions of the surgeon in advance. But okay, if I didn't have the ability to use one of my legs for a period of time, what does that mean? And I felt like my other leg is very strong. It's probably the strongest part of my body, and I have pretty good upper body strength. So I just figured I'd be able to push myself up, use a cane, balance on one leg, about 36 hours. How great I felt, unbeknownst to me that there was a nerve blocker still in the system that didn't go away until Friday night, the Thursday morning surgery. So over the course of Friday, because I felt so good, I stopped taking the painkillers. I know you want me to say that I had a beer watching March Madness, and that probably exacerbated. I had 2 beers. Okay. Big beer. 36 hours after surgery, and I'm sure that added to the inflammation. But when the nerve blocker wore off, Saturday, Sunday, Monday were all pretty rough, and it was hard to get caught up with taking some of the painkillers, getting back on those. So it was very uncomfortable. And going back to the sleep point, I think what made it really bad was I just couldn't sleep because everywhere I turned hurt. And so that just made the daytime that much worse. But it's now been on a steady improvement now. I walk around the house and go upstairs mostly without a cane. My mobility at physical therapy is already better than what it was pre-surgery with my hip. And I feel like I'm very much on the road to recovery.
Yeah, 2 weeks today. That's crazy. But it definitely was. A lot of people are like, Andrew's so young. How is hip surgery? I'm like, this is the important year. I think this is maybe another one of the things that we try to do in this podcast is inspire and educate. And if you've got something that you've been like, oh, I'm going to try to wait, or I'm going to hold off, it really, if possible, and there's some scenarios where it doesn't make sense, I think doing it sooner rather than later really makes sense, because it affects everything, right? It affects everything. And I say this all the time in my bootcamp community, nothing's more important than your health, right? Like nothing's more important than not only your health, but like how you feel. Like I think the hip thing was, you're a great sport and you're never going to complain, and you never complained when it was hurting you for 5 years, but it's very draining to be in pain. Pain really drains you. And I think that I already just like what you said in the beginning about being on the other side of it. I already, even though you're still uncomfortable, you're still obviously, you've got a long way to go. But I do think that there's something to be said for just taking action and really doing whatever it needs, whatever you can do, whatever in your power to do to get you to the other side of it. So I'm very, very happy about that. And I'm excited for when you come back to boot camp. I'm not going to push you to come back too soon, but I am excited for when we're able to get that muscle back in the areas where you haven't been able to train for a long time. And I know physical therapy will be helpful with that. All in all, I think the real message is that fitness matters, right? I don't care how much you're doing, how often, being strong, keeping your strength up, getting your protein, doing those things, they really, really matter. And even more so as you're getting older. That's really the biggest message. And the other thing that you're really good about, and you've always been really good about this as far as I can remember, is sleep. You prioritize your sleep. And I think that is how you're able to do as much as you do. I mean, you say you don't do much. You never sit. I mean, like for the past 20 years, call it, there's not really much sitting around on the weekends. We're buzzing around. We're somewhere. We're doing something. We're going somewhere. But getting a good night's sleep has definitely helped to keep you energized for that. And you do have a really good nighttime routine. You do go to bed when there's not something going on. You're really consistent with your sleep, which I think is really good.
Yeah, I just know how my body reacts and how I feel, and I do think that particularly over the last 3 or 4 years, I've prioritized it more, especially going to bed early, because I do think the pain in my hip, I would roll around at night and get a sharp pain and it would wake me up. So I think the quality of my sleep has diminished over the last few years. And I've tried to make up for that by going to bed earlier so that at least I would get the same amount of cumulative real rest. But it's just another one of those things of being aware of your body. And you sleep less than I do. I don't think you need as much as
I sleep a lot.
As I do. And
I sleep a lot. I go to bed early. I wake up early, but I go to bed early.
Yeah, I still think, though, you sleep a little bit less than I do. But I think you get a healthy amount of sleep for sure. I'm not taking the other side of that. I don't think you push yourself. Yeah. But again, it's like where I think our bodies are a little bit different from one another.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, you did it, Andrew. You were a podcast guest on the Start Before You're Ready podcast.
Well, can we go back to the waiting on me part? I just want to make sure that we don't miss out on the opportunity for you. If you didn't wait on me enough after hip surgery, if you really feel like that was a missed opportunity, I'm happy to afford you that opportunity to wait on me, especially this weekend. We're back to drinking beer now that I'm feeling good. So
I'm so glad you're feeling good. I'm so excited. Lindsay's coming home this weekend. Hopefully we'll see all of our kids at some point. Brandon might surface. I know we're going to go see Cameron on Saturday. He's got a lacrosse game at Washington Lee, so that will be great. But yeah, so I was waiting for that. I was waiting for you to have been very serious, and I was wondering when you were going to start being funny. But that's one thing I do love about you. One of the many things is you do have a great sense of humor. I think you surprise people sometimes. You do have a great sense of humor, and that's one of the things that when we first met 30 some years ago, I remember most that I was most attracted to, and I'm glad that you still have that sense of humor, because it's really important in life, because life's hard. We've gone through some hard stuff, some really hard stuff. And back to a little more serious, I'm just really grateful for your partnership, how you show up as a father, how you showed up as a husband, friend, and just proud of you, because you are you, and that's it. Like, you're the same exact guy that I met when, you were 19 years old and we were working at Daryl's. You were a college student. You're not different at all. There's nothing different about you. A little bit older, a little bit wiser, a little bit more responsible, I guess. You were pretty responsible back then, but all the things that I loved about you, I feel like you just continued to demonstrate. I guess, Andrew, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being on. I know this is not your jam. I know people will appreciate it. I should have asked people what questions to ask you, but in full disclosure, I wasn't allowed to ask things like, what do I do that annoys you? And all the questions that I wanted to ask. He's like, don't so I tried not to ask those things. So I think I did pretty good.
Yeah, you did great of avoiding those things, but I'm happy to host a separate conversation with people who are interested in knowing the answer to those questions that we can do privately. I mean, I appreciate you pushing me to be on, and just to reciprocate your compliments to me. I think it is just unbelievable what you've created in this community. I look around at hundreds of people whose lives have been transformed by your drive and compassion and friendship, and just taking the initiative that really started with Larry's, your dad's passing, and what that has sort of grown into from that passion, that love you have for him. And of course, you taught classes and were into teaching and fitness before that, but it's just unbelievable from those early seeds what this has blossomed into, and just the lasting impact that you're going to have. And it's not just the hundreds of people who go to class, but it's the hundreds and thousands of people that those individuals live with, their kids, their parents, their siblings, and how much better they are as people as a result of being a part of this community. And so just so incredibly proud of what you've created, and really glad to be a small part of it.
Thank you, Andrew. That means more to me than anything. Thanks for listening, guys. And like Andrew said, if you want a private session to find out more, he's available. It's probably going to involve a local pub, but that's okay. Thank you so much, Andrew. This was great. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Start Before You're Ready. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend who might need a little motivation. Ready to start your own journey? Check out our workouts and nutrition coaching programs at kellysbootcamp.net. You can choose from in-person sessions or virtual programs. Set up a complimentary coaching session to get started. Follow along with me and the show on social media at Kellys_bootcamp. Until next time, this is Kelly Young reminding you that the best time to start is always now.